Hello everyone and welcome back to Fortnite Hub. My name is Zakky, and in this video we're going to be talking about what's coming up with Fortnite over the next 2 years. I'm really excited to make this video. It's going to involve a lot of things that real Fortnite fans are going to be super excited about. To start with, the Fortnite World Cup has finally been spoken about by Epic Games on Twitter, which is super exciting. But that's not the only thing that we're seeing right now, and we're going to go over the Travis Scott event, and we're going to go over the new party Royale and other things more in this video. We're going to start off with the World Cup and then lead on to the other things that I'm personally very excited as a Fortnite fan to see. So let's start off with, I don't know what I'm going to title this video, but if it has anything to do with the World Cup, which it most likely might do, I'll start off with what we know about the World Cup coming at some point later. Before we dive straight into the Fortnite competitive tweets that we have been seeing coming up on Twitter, it's clear what the notion is all round, at least at the time of recording, how the community feels about Fortnite. As some of you may remember, #RipFortnite ended up trending on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. And that was honestly not a great time. I really didn't enjoy seeing that hashtag trending at the very least. Thankfully afterwards, #ThankYouEpicGames became a trend, and that was the other side of the Fortnite community, I think, trying to show their appreciation to Fortnite, considering the #RipFortnite trend that trended literally 24 hours previously. Today, however, #ThankYouEpicGames is again trending, and when I saw this, I wanted to know why it was, and eventually it became very clear that Fortnite Competitive, the official Fortnite Competitive Twitter account, tweeted out explaining what's going on with the esports side of things and why Fortnite World Cup 2020 has been cancelled. But let's actually read everything that they have written, because it's a whole Twitter thread, and then we can make our analysis. So they start off with, last month we said we would provide our evolving 2020 competitive roadmap. Today we wanted to provide updates on where we're at with plans in 2020. Physical events. For the rest of 2020, all Fortnite competitions will be held online. Due to the limitations of cross-region online competition, there will not be a Fortnite World Cup in 2020. We don't know when a return to large global in-person events will be practical, but we're hoping to be able to put on some form of Fortnite World Cup in 2021. In the meantime, we have more info about online events with FNCS, Cash Cups, third-party events, and broadcasts. For FNCS, it will be returning each season for the rest of 2020. Players around the globe will have the opportunity to prove they're the best. We will iterate on formats to improve player experiences. Cash Cups. We're ensuring players can hop into competitive matches with cash prizes on a routine basis. We've been iterating on how players earn points as well as the structure of the tournaments. Two-step Cash Cups will qualify a top group of players into a final lobby. Third-party events. We continue to work with third parties to provide more experiences for players. All events must be held online only until further notice. Please see the TNS guide in the link to host an event. And finally, broadcasts. We've heard the feedback. We are bringing back official broadcasts starting with the FNCS Invitational this weekend. Tune in for all of the action and more competitive news. Week 1 broadcast starts at 1 PM ET on Saturday at fn.gg/Twitch. So we already knew, I think at least most of us knew, that Fortnite World Cup 2020 was not going to be happening in the same way that it happened last year, simply because of clear issues that are happening this year that Epic Games nor the players have any control over, and that's just clear. What upset a lot of us was that Epic weren't saying almost anything about it, and instead continued to bring up tournaments with issues with the servers and other things like that that really upset everyone. As we can see from all of these tweets right here, I am super happy to see how many people are happy to see this Twitter thread, and that's why I've compiled a number of tweets from multiple influencers, esports players, etc., who are really happy with what Epic have tweeted out here. Of course, we still need to see how everything runs, and hopefully the broadcasts will be good. Hopefully they'll be of good quality, but in general, we cannot blame Epic Games for not hosting a World Cup in 2020, clearly putting so many millions on the line in honestly a non-competitive environment, which it would be if it was online compared to a LAN event. They're not going to be putting 100 million million down for that. However, this isn't the only thing that people are thanking Epic Games for. It's definitely a large part of it, but finally it does seem to feel like Fortnite is coming back in some form. Now, I personally, when the troughs were bad with Fortnite, i.e. when Fortnite has been at its lower point, I've personally still not been too worried, because Fortnite, regardless of how low it is, it's never not been at the top of Twitch, or at least within the games at the top of Twitch, even at its lowest point. However, saying that, it's always good to be the best that you can be, and I think Fortnite's trying to go back to that. After Chapter 2 Season 1 started, we didn't see anything for 100 days. The agency and other points of interest came in, and honestly that was something that Fortnite had really never seen before, especially with the NPCs and the challenges that we saw with them, along with how they mixed Deadpool challenges and eventually a Deadpool event into the mix. See, over this time they've slowly kept adding things so that the game wouldn't get so stale that people were really not interested. We all got to a point where we started getting worried, but now it feels like Epic are adding more things. We've recently seen nerfs and balancing within the game that have even been emailed to people now, and no one can forget the Travis Scott concert that happened, that not only blew gamers' minds but even blew big tech strategists looking at it with eager eyes. That's because the numbers that the event pulled were absolutely incredible, and of course a lot of this was credited due to the current events, which is leading everyone to stay at home. But if there was no interest, if there was no trust that this was going to be good, this would not have seen the numbers that it did, but also seen the recurring number of players who came back more than once to see the concert more than once. And personally, I was one of them, seeing the event a total of 3 out of 5 times. It's now leading even the music industry to be looking at how Epic Games and Fortnite are essentially looking at culture, using culture to bring everyone together, not just gamers, but people in general. After this, we then saw, actually quite promptly after the Travis Scott concert, we saw Fortnite Party Royale. And to me, this Party Royale is potentially the biggest thing that Fortnite has done in the past year. It's difficult for me to explain why I say that without crediting a user on Twitter by the name Matthew Ball, who understands this stuff way better than I will for a long time. Matthew Ball has done many very impressive things across very big name companies, and as far as I'm concerned, is a thought leader in the digital media and marketing and sales landscape. He writes, Fortnite continues to push away from Battle Royale gun-based play as it pursues more social hangout based virtual world experiences, launching a new island focused on races, building, fishing, dancing, skill competitions, no guns allowed, no deaths, concerts, movie tie-in events, in-game movie theater, etc. are important, get lots of attention, but macro consideration is that there's a low ceiling to high skill games, especially adversarial ones. Virtual worlds need to fit many levels of immersion, skill, emotional needs. We watch Game of Thrones and The Office differently, and The Office is rewatched even more differently. Your mother won't go to Fortnite for the same reason you do, just as parents first joined Facebook to see photos of their friends, understand their lives and friends. To quote two people, big question is what's the virtual world equivalent of hanging poolside? This is Fortnite checking this out. Though more like beachside. You can tan, swim, volleyball, build a sandcastle, etc. Animal Crossing is basically virtual gardening. It's therapeutic, it's never right or wrong, it's personal, it's never zero-sum, it's self-expressive well beyond a skin or emote. This is much bigger as a use case than Battle Royale or even shooters overall. Gets to questions like what is a game? Easy to identify some, but the use of a game engine doesn't decide. Is IRL gardening a game? What if you trade plants and end competitions? Does virtually rendering artists make a live concert a game? Eventually you get to a point where games are just an area in a virtual Fortnite world you enter, almost like being in a mall and going into the Void VR experience, then grabbing a meal and shopping with friends, then doing a pottery class. It's a thing you do. This is critically connected to agency and the individual sense of self, both parts of Epic's overall metaverse objectives. You aren't a murderer, you don't only play games, games aren't the only way you socialize. If that's all Fortnite is, you can't can't really be or feel as you. And of course, Epic's master plan for Fortnite, where he quotes a Twitter thread that I'm not going to go over right now, but is potentially one of the most forward-thinking Twitter threads I have ever seen about Fortnite on Twitter. And I'm a nerd for this stuff, a huge nerd for it. I'll be going over the metaverse in a video once I feel ready to try to convey the message of what the metaverse actually is, because that is something that is much bigger than what a normal Fortnite creator would talk about. Let's put it that way. Regardless, hopefully that made some sort of sense to you, but essentially Fortnite is not only a battle royale game, and it shouldn't be, or else it would never have grown into the whatever it is that it's going to be in 5 years from now. See, people do get bored. Once they get into something repetitive, eventually boredom ensues and they try something different. This is why it's been great to have games like Apex Legends, Call of Duty and Valorant release around Fortnite, because people need variation. When Fortnite expands its IP, which is intellectual property, when Fortnite expands its world essentially from being a battle royale to also a social hangout area, that's where things get interesting, because at that point you're redefining the purpose of what the game is meant for, which is extremely important in keeping more than one player base involved. Let's look at creative, for example. When creative was released, I knew that Fortnite was going to be around for a much longer time than people gave it credit for, because I already saw the similarities and parallels between Fortnite creative and Minecraft. Now that we have Party Royale, this opens up a new layer of what Fortnite can potentially be, and as they progress Fortnite Party Royale, because as of right now it's totally basic, over time they're essentially building what is called the third place, and this is where things get even more interesting. See, I'm not the only person talking about a third place with Fortnite, although not many are. Wired posted an article today, or recently I believe, titled "Games like Fortnite are today's third places," as the online game is proving with Travis Scott and Party Royale, digital places are every bit as legitimate as their analog counterparts. When a Titan-sized Travis Scott avatar landed in Fortnite between the first few bars of sicko mode, the quake sent players flying across the map like individual popcorns. 12 million people were watching Scott perform. After the shock, many went sprinting back towards him. Looking up from an ant point of view, players saw Scott rapping and headbanging against a sky red with shooting stars. It was the perfect visual metaphor for the first few seconds of a headlining Coachella concert. Over the course of 5 concerts that started last Thursday, publisher Epic Games gave 27 million socially isolated players something more than a visual metaphor though, and something they desperately missed: an event space. Pushing aside the marketing orgy that is Travis Scott x Fortnite, a celebrity was performing a concert. People were literally there together, and it was all part of an event in some broader notion of space. Ontologically, the digital distinction may not mean as much at all at a time when electronic signals are the primary means of connection. Weeks into quarantine, the general public better recognizes the legitimacy of digital communion, but gamers have known it for decades. Fortnite is one of the most pop culture games of all time, and with that title comes the project of making a well-established, widely understood fact of gaming culture known to a broader audience. Online games are places too, to Fortnite, denizens, and DJ Marshmallows before it in February of 19 was as if their local Starbucks manager hired a national celebrity for a residency. Shooting each other, snacking on Takis over open mic, or watching Travis Scott make the sky fall, Fortnite players, like regulars in any online game, feel a sense of place here. Cementing its status as a hangout, today Fortnite added a new violence-free map called Party Royale, where amid cartoony fast food storefronts and quiet beaches, players can race ATVs, play soccer, or attend disco parties with squads of friends and strangers. Quarantined at home, all anyone can hope to wring out of social bonds is a sense of presence. Luckily, presence is easily translated into the digital plane, has spurred a spike in online gaming, and embodied or not, competing or vibing together, players are merging their subjectivities right now in online games, a community space doesn't need a hardwood sign over the door to be a legitimate place, it just needs real people who treat it that way. In 89, sociologists, and I promise before I keep on with this is the stuff that has made me understand that Fortnite's nowhere near dead and it's not going to be for a long time. So if you're interested in that, then this is what it's about. In 89, sociologist Ray Oldenburg coined the term third place to describe the locals between home and work that ferment communities, pub, churches, coffee shops, the YMCA, all part of a long line of physical space including the Roman baths, Victorian gin palaces, etc. A couple times a week you go decompress, maintain social bonds, assert your place in culture. At the same time, it's unlikely that Oldenburg was picturing rainbow backlit mechanical keyboards and alien-esque gaming PCs when he theorized that. In the end, the human instinct for community will eventually prevail. First, massively, multiplayer online role-playing game thrives because, on top of a role-playing game, they offered both a sense of place and a venue for self-expression. Between dungeon raids and Fetch the Thing quests, players convened in gardens or pubs in central cities to show off their new gear, or maybe stand around idly absorbing the existence of their online friends. In a recent interview with Wired, the game director for World of Warcraft recalled how back when he started playing in 04, he loaded into the game simply to be there. Over the last 15 years, games not traditionally set up for human-to-human relations have slowly integrated lessons from the heyday of MMORPGs, games as a service, the latest trend in game design that pushes ongoing continuous content to keep players interested, engaged, and spending unfathomable sums of money on digital content. Successful AAA games don't die anymore. These constantly refreshed titles are so endlessly consumable as cultural objects that to many, they've developed a feeling of home. Games don't need to be designed as third places to become them. Gamers don't need circuses and bathhouses to feel a sense of place. They don't even need congregation spaces. For millennials who love video games but hate talking on the phone, absent-minded gabbing on Apex Legends VC or even over the chat app Discord comes naturally. Now, there is more to that article, but honestly, I'm trying to find the balance between talking about stuff that I'm nerdy about and stuff that most of you guys clicked for. But this is why I've never really been worried about where Fortnite's going. I've had my times where I would hope that they would make a move sooner, which actually has been over the past few months, honestly. I understand how this game is sticking around way past the Battle Royale genre. See, Fortnite has everyone in their ecosystem now. All they have to do is make something of value to people, and they already have the attention that they need. They don't really even need to put copious amounts into marketing. See, it's so big that it gets what's called earned media, which essentially means that rather than paying Google or Spotify or YouTube to show their ads, which they do to a certain extent, but instead they will end up on trending when a new update comes out because someone like Cypher, PK, or Laserbeam, or Lachlan, or whoever else is going to make copious amounts of money making a video about that update that instead advertisers end up paying for rather than Epic Games, meaning that essentially Epic have built a totally free marketing machine that benefits both the game players and the marketers, i.e. the content creators like YouTubers and Twitch streamers, all benefiting together. I'm going to do more ranting about Epic Games and the stuff that they've done over the past few years in another video on my own channel potentially, so I'll put a link to that in the description below, because Epic Games have impressed me a lot over the past few years, researching, analyzing exactly how they've done stuff, building up Fortnite, building up Epic Games Store, their own economies, etc. Something I'm very nerdy about. But that being said, hopefully this gave you exactly what you wanted and a lot more. Hopefully my analysis of all of this has made some sense to you. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask me. I would love to respond to comments about this. This is the stuff that I get the most nerdy about, so I will do my best to answer every question in the best way possible. And if I can't answer your question, I'll try to point you in the right direction so that you can find out the answer. That being said, long video today, but I wanted to go over a lot. I hope this video was helpful to you in one way or another. If it was, a like is always very much appreciated. My creator code is Zakky #ad. I really appreciate everyone using that code. It supports a lot. Subscribe and keep those notifications on if you want to be kept up to date on everything going on here. But that being said, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next Fortnite video.